Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today, American Rebel Holdings Incorporated just filed an 8K, and I am seeing some interesting exchanges happening behind the scenes. Quick note, this is not financial advice, just my take on public filings for educational purposes. The company is swapping preferred stock for common stock, and it hints at some financial gymnastics. Alright, let's dive into this filing from American Rebel Holdings Incorporated. It is an 8K report, which basically means something important just happened that the company needs to tell everyone about, usually pretty quickly. This particular filing is all about some pretty significant agreements they've entered into. The main story here revolves around something called Streeterville Series E Preferred Exchange Agreements. Think of it like this, the company owed some money or had some special kind of stock, called Series E Preferred Stock, that they had issued to a company called Streeterville. Now, they're agreeing to swap a portion of that preferred stock for regular common stock. They did this in a few different rounds. On the 30th of April, for instance, they exchanged over 323 shares of preferred stock for more than 816,000 shares of common stock. That is a lot of shares. Then they did more exchanges in early May, swapping more preferred stock for even more common stock. These exchanges represent a dollar amount, showing the value they are agreeing upon for these swaps. Then there is another set of exchanges tied to a Streeterville June 2025 note exchange agreement. This sounds a bit more like they're dealing with debt, specifically a secured promissory note. They've actually partitioned off parts of this note, these partition notes, and then exchanged those parts for common stock. So again, they are giving out shares of common stock in exchange for something else. In this case, reducing their debt or obligations related to these notes. They did this a couple of times in early May, giving out hundreds of thousands and then millions of shares of common stock in these note exchanges. Adding another layer to this story is the Streeterville Capital Funds release. It seems like back in June of 2025, American Rebel Holdings Incorporated received a pretty large secured promissory note from Streeterville, and a good chunk of that money was put into a special account for their subsidiary, Arkansas H Sub, LLC. On the 30th of April, and then again on May 5th of 2026, Streeterville and Archie H Sub instructed the bank to release some of that money, $250,000 each time. Back to the main company, this looks like them accessing funds that were previously set aside. Now, let's talk about the actual shares that were issued on the 30th of April. As part of those Series E Preferred exchanges, they issued over 816,000 shares of common stock to Streeterville. The filing mentions a per S-hair price of $0.396 for this. Then, in the first few days of May, they continued these exchanges, issuing hundreds of thousands more shares, with the per share price varying a bit, like $0.378 on May 1st and then $0.32 on May 4th. Following that, on May 5th, they did a really big block of exchanges. They issued over 1 million shares of common stock for the preferred stock exchanges at a per S-hair price of $0.24. And on the same day, they also did those note exchanges, issuing another 262,500 shares of common stock, also at $0.24. Per S-hair, it is quite a bit of stock moving around. Then on May 6th, they did even more of those note exchanges, issuing a massive 2,790,436 shares of common stock. This time, the price per S-hair mentioned is $0.272. The filing also notes that as of the date of this report, there are still some shares over 1.7 million that haven't been issued yet under these agreements. And the numbers add up. As of May 8th, the company reports having issued and outstanding a little over 10.5 million shares of common stock. But remember, that doesn't include the nearly 1.7 million shares that are still due to be issued to Streeterville. So, the total number of shares out there will be higher soon. Now, here is something important to understand about these share issuances. The company states that these issuances were exempt from the usual registration requirements under securities laws. This usually means they were sold directly to a specific investor or group of investors, not offered to the general public, and these legal exemptions are common for these types of private agreements. They also mention that these are restricted securities, meaning they can't just be freely sold on the open market without meeting certain conditions. Lastly, the filing includes an Exhibit 104, which is a cover page interactive data file. This is basically a digital tag file that helps make the information in the filing easier for computers to read and analyze. It's becoming more standard for regulatory filings. So, what is the story here? American Rebel Holdings Incorporated is actively exchanging its preferred stock and notes for common stock with Streeterville. This is a significant move that increases the number of shares outstanding, which can dilute the value of existing shares if the company's overall value doesn't grow proportionally. On the flip side, It might be a way for the company to reduce debt or satisfy other obligations. The fact that they are doing this through private placement suggests they are trying to manage their capital structure and potentially raise funds or clear liabilities without going through a public offering, which can be more complex and costly. The mention of restricted securities is a key point for any existing or future shareholders to be aware of. The risk I am watching is the continuous increase in the number of outstanding shares. While reducing debt or preferred stock obligations is generally good, issuing large amounts of common stock without a commensurate increase in company value can put pressure on the stock price. It will be crucial to see how the company uses the funds released from the DACA account and whether these exchanges translate into actual operational growth. Oh, and the research tools I actually use are linked in the description. They help keep this channel going. That is my take. Stay decoded. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps. And subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description.